Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on Beyond Boundaries, an advanced surveillance for oil and gas remote facilities, presented by Convergent Middle East and Axis Communications. I'm Louise Waters, editor of Oil Reviewed Middle East, which is hosting this webinar today, where we'll be addressing the security challenges associated with remote oil and gas facilities and unveiling the latest cutting-edge surveillance solutions for mitigating these challenges. To introduce our companies taking part, Convergent Middle East is a leading systems integrator, bringing more than 20 years experience in designing, integrating and maintaining customized turnkey solutions in physical security, IT infrastructure, audiovisual, data centers and AI software development, serving both government and private sectors. Axis Communications, founded in 1984 and headquartered in Sweden, leads the industry in network video technology, offering a wide range of products and services for the video surveillance, analytics, access control and audio systems, aiming to create a smarter and safer world by providing innovative solutions for security and business improvements. So to introduce our topic, in the rapidly evolving realm of remote oil and gas facilities, ensuring real-time robust security poses a continual challenge due to the unique nature of these remote sites and their infrastructure. This webinar aims to give you a comprehensive understanding of the various challenges inherent in these environments, the pivotal role played by surveillance in mitigating these challenges, and the latest cutting-edge surveillance solutions. Our expert speakers will navigate you through the complexities of securing remote facilities and implementing adaptive, flexible, integrated and future-proof security solutions. Turning then to our expert speakers, Issam Shibani is Head of Resales and Business Development at Convergent Middle East. He has over 14 years of experience managing the commercial and technical designs of complex security systems for a wide array of clients. He's demonstrated expertise in milestone-setting successful deployments, including Expo 2020, police forces, significant developments and iconic projects in the UAE and across the Middle East, while leading the pre-sales and business development teams at MVP Tech, Convergent Middle East and Africa. Issam is driven by the zeal to understand how modern technology can serve client security and operational requirements and align customer aspirations with the best engineering practices. Andrea Monteleone is Segment Development Manager, Critical Infrastructure, EMEA at Axis Communications. With a dynamic career spanning over 15 years, Andrea has consistently excelled in the realm of critical infrastructure and security. As a Critical Infrastructure Segment Development Manager for EMEA, he is a strategic visionary, collaborating closely with teams to craft and implement long-term strategies tailored specifically to the critical infrastructure sector. His expertise lies in supporting sales and marketing teams across EMEA, ensuring they're finely attuned to meet the unique needs of customers in this sector. Having previously served as a sales manager in various security-focused companies, he brings a wealth of hands-on experience and a deep understanding of the industry. So, just to discuss the proceedings, we will have a poll popping up during the proceedings. So I would like to encourage all of the audience to take part, and we'll give you a few minutes to answer the poll questions. And then following the discussions, we'll have a Q&A session. You can submit your questions at any time during the proceedings in the Q&A chat box below your screens. I'm sure the presentations will stimulate lots of interest and it would be great to get some discussion going. So please keep the questions coming in throughout the event and we will address those in the Q&A session at the end. So now perhaps we can start then by looking at the remote oil and gas operations landscape. Issam, perhaps you'd like to set the scene for us and give us a brief overview of this unique landscape, given the nature of oil and gas as a critical resource.
Thanks, Louise, for the introduction. Thanks, Andrea. Pleasure to see you guys again. Just to give a context to the discussion and to break down maybe the oil and gas discussion. The oil and gas is one of the most difficult fields and most complex fields when it comes to security. The value chain is sort of split for us into three different parts. The first part is the upstream business. The upstream business is basically the exploration, the drilling, the production is the initial phase of the oil and gas value chain. You have the midstream side of things. Midstream is mainly the transmission pipelines, pumping stations, compressor and valve stations, utilities support stations for water and power, mid-storage terminals, heating stations. There's a wide array that goes into the midstream. And then finally, one of the most complex parts of this operation, especially from a security perspective, is the downstream, which are the refineries, very complicated, large, centralized assets that are very, very critical in this chain. And usually the flow of business continuity across the chains is very tightly linked together. When we look at these these things, we look at them mainly for the discussion today from a MIA perspective, Middle East and Africa perspective. This lens offers us an interesting outlook because all of these different value chain nodes are actually located in remote areas, in many cases, very difficult environments, deserts, oceans, seas. So some of the unique points that's relevant to the discussion would be the operation in remote locations and challenging environments from a natural perspective, the high heat, the deserts, and it's a bit far away from law enforcement and all of those things. The second aspect is the political instability. I mean, our region, we're lucky, unlucky to be in a region where political instability is the name of the game, basically, and many of these facilities are located in these places. Hostile communities in many cases, or being present in hostile environments where you have all sorts of different challenges posed by that. Of course, the sheer scale and complexity of these facilities is a main unique point to the oil and gas. These are very complicated sites with a varying asset list, and usually they're pretty large. And the last one is the extended geographical scale and the spread of these facilities. We're talking pipelines that might go hundreds of kilometers, very large fencing areas, within the individual facility itself, lots of complications. So we're not talking about a limited single site. It's a complicated infrastructure and is surely unique in its nature.
Yes, thank you very much. Just perhaps going on then to the specific security challenges that we face. I guess we have, of course, the physical security challenges, but also environmental hazards, and I guess with the increased connectivity, cyber security challenges as well. Perhaps you'd like to walk us through those, Isam?
Sure. So when we discuss specific challenges, I'm gonna just split them into two let's say categories. You have the generic challenges in the industry, which are maybe common between oil and gas and several other industries. I would mention the first one, which is the continuity and harmony with operations. When we build these security systems, we cannot build them independent of how these organizations run their business and how they run their operations. It has to go hand in hand in how they run the business and play a positive role in it to solve problems, not to increase levels of complexity to an already complex environment. The second generic point is the workplace safety. These are very industrial environments. They work with a lot of chemicals, high pressure gases, heavy machinery moving around. So workplace safety is a key element here. Safety of the assets themselves. These places are full of very critical assets. Needless to say, I mean, the whole world is running on the lifeline of oil and gas, basically, and that side of energy production. Compliance to regulations and standards, and again, there's a very long list of those. And they might be different between one company and another. They might be different between one country and another even. And the fifth part is the operational efficiency that we look at maybe a bit differently from a security perspective, especially considering that much of these systems have been legacy systems, and they were not very efficient, let's say, before. Before we have the set of solutions that Andrea is going to talk about, and I will touch on as well. Going into a bit more specifics to the oil and gas industry, I think the inadequate integration of these obsolete or legacy security systems is one specific concern and challenge for these organizations, simply because they've been in business for a very long time. They might have legacy systems that's already there, and it's an investment that had been paid for, and it's very difficult to move on from it. It's very challenging sometimes to move these big ships around. It's a very globalized industry. So again, the geographic spread in oil and gas is very specific, especially that the production itself is coming from these remote areas, and this is the start of the process for oil and gas. That poses a very specific challenge to this industry. Multi-site, massive sites, large workforces. We're talking about large organizations, the likes of a Shell or an Aramco or any of those with more than 50,000 employees on board, and heavy vehicles moving around. And maybe the final point on this would be the actual presence in geopolitically unstable or hostile environment. If you have a car factory, you can choose a very nice and safe and area with a developed infrastructure and go build your factory there. In the case of oil and gas, you have to follow the source of the oil and gas and build your facilities there. And it's dictated by where the natural resource is, not where the safety is. So that poses a very unique challenge for us. Finally, maybe to list a few threats as part of the challenges, I would mention asset theft is the main thing. The HSE challenges that we have, the accidents that happen in the workplace is one of the highest amongst all industries. Tapping into some pipelines and basically stealing what's going on those pipelines. Sabotage, for whatever motive that is. It could be terrorism, it could be, for simply vandalism purposes, and kidnapping, of course, one of the main concerns. Just to wrap up, maybe a few of the challenges that we can think of.
Great. So there's a pretty complex picture then of all these security challenges and threats, which are, of course, increasing. And of course, creating an increased demand then for the advanced technologies and surveillance technologies. So perhaps turning then now to Andrea, I guess surveillance is a starting point for addressing these challenges. So perhaps you would like to explain a little bit about the role of surveillance in addressing some of these complex challenges, and then we can turn to the evolving technology solutions.
Well, hopefully I will be able to share some insight about the topic. First of all, thanks, Louise and Sam, for having me here. It's really an honor. Well, Sam is kind of drawing a very complex scenario where a lot of problem issues, legacies are kind of bringing their contribution to making the problem even more complex. Within this scenario, surveillance is a big topic, has been a big topic for the last 15 years, I would say. And now the scenario is changing even quicker. because we have many different elements making it more challenging from every perspective. If you look at the slide right now, we could see the four main pillars, I would say, in terms of usage of surveillance as per today. But as I mentioned before, the scenario we are living, the importance of those assets is increasing a lot. And also the level of the threat and the type of the threats is changing at a pace which has never been seen before. So what we see here is kind of the traditional approach to surveillance, but it's something that we need to change. If we dig a little bit more into the different trends, mainly from a regulatory perspective, coming in from the US or from Europe, and we try to move forward, the approach we are supposed to use when it comes to surveillance is changing a lot, because rather than thinking of threat protection, asset protection, so thinking of something coming from the outside, we need to think of something completely different. Rather than surveillance only, we should think of resilience, which is a completely different idea, let's say, because it's bringing into the equation all the different potential threats. So rather than thinking of surveillance, it's something that is becoming proactiveness and situational awareness. We are kind of thinking ahead of the different problems which could happen in a remote facility, trying to understand and to act way before the incident occurs. And this is something which is quite difficult, because Issam was mentioning it before. The systems we have as per today in those facilities could be quite old, quite, let's say, old-fashioned in the way they are implemented. So we have a great opportunity in order to use the technology we already have, but scaling up, trying to change the approach and to support through technology. I mean, the technology we are using every day with the cameras for security purposes, to change the way we think, to change the way we work when it comes to the security space. This means that we can reuse, let's say, or take advantage of the technology we have today from many different perspectives. We need to consider that a camera, just for giving you an example, many of you already know, is not only an element making you able to see something. It's a powerful computer. It's an IoT device with the great advantage of bringing in a video stream. And with the computational power on board, so on the edge, it's really possible to completely change the paradigm with which we consider what we can do with the technology we are using today. If, again, we try to step up and move forward, we can see how the very same technology we are using for security purposes could be used in a completely different way, innovative way. And if we move to the next slide, we could, for example, use the health and safety space, which is something that nobody was considered as an area where cameras could be used. And leveraging these cameras, powerful cameras, what we could do is to I wouldn't like to use the word, we could monitor and understand from a completely different perspective what's really going on in such a complex environment like the oil and gas industry in every single area and in every single country, let's say. What is really interesting is that using the camera with their power and using the camera with the different analytics, we can create kind of real-time environment and monitoring system by which we are not controlling people, we are monitoring their behaviors. So we do not run into trouble when it comes to privacy. And again, using the analytics, we are collecting metadata. Collecting metadata let us understand how people are moving, how people are behaving, what is really happening, what from a operational point of view. And this helps us to be proactive because elaborating this information, analyzing this data will let all the different operators to be protected, because every potential dangerous behavior could be stopped way in advance. And the first, of course, fact is that the person or the operator himself will be safe. On the other hand, we have a kind of a side effect when it comes to the security space and when it comes to the operation space. When it comes to the security space, means that people working into a facility are not going to create problems and are not posing security threats from within, not coming from the outside. On the other hand, when it comes to the operational side, we are thinking of resilience and we are acting towards resilience, because this way we are not impacting on the operation, on the business continuity. And it's something that when it comes to critical infrastructure, when it comes to the oil and gas industry, it's something that we have to consider the proper way, because a disruption in the service is something that nobody could even consider. It's something that we need to avoid in every possible way. So if we dig down with the next slide and we try to make it very practical, we see how these analytics used in the health and safety space are exactly aligned in terms of usage and in terms of process with what we are used to. But we are just supporting through technology the, let's say, good old ways of doing things. Because if we think of the hierarchy of control, which is kind of a protocol oftenly used in the health and safety environment, in the health and safety organizations, what we see is that if we look at the right side of the slide, of course, employers are providing the workers with PPE and they are controlling everything from an administrative point of view. But again, we are working and living in a very complex environment. So with these solutions, with this technology, what we could do is to work in the engineering control and substitution space, which means that we could be able to understand a lot more about the way our work are moving forward and moving around, and we could implement new, better procedure, learning from what we are doing and what our workers are doing every day. This will bring a lot of advantages to the way we work, to the way we implement our systems, and to the work, to the way our facilities are delivering their services. This is in a very nutshell what we could do with technology today.
And can I just ask you, Andrea, to what extent are these sort of proactive solutions already being implemented, let's say in the Middle East region? Are these now at a very early stage, or are we actually seeing these sorts of solutions? Because I think a lot of, if you're talking about the oil and gas companies in the Middle East, a lot of them I think are pretty advanced in how they're deploying the technology.
What I see is that the trend is the very same everywhere across the globe and in the Middle East as well. We are at the very beginning, let's say, of the implementation of those technologies, but mainly because today, with this kind of hype around artificial intelligence, we have kind of a trigger letting us know that putting together cameras and artificial intelligence, these are the results we could achieve. What's really interesting to underline is the pace. On average, the adoption of this kind of technology is quite slow, while today the pace is really high. This means that in order to cope with the new requirements, in order to cope with the quickly changing environment and to the different threats jumping in, changing the way we work every day, many customers, also the big ones, are investing a lot because they immediately get the value behind. They can see how much money they are saving, how many people are not injured anymore. So we have many different elements to consider, but for sure it's happening quite fast. And this is a great advantage from one side. It could be a risk on the other one, because relying on this kind of technology without understanding properly everything could be a threat, but it's something that we are managing quite quickly.
Great, that's really interesting to hear. I think we now have some poll questions. If we could share those. But I think it's very exciting. What we're sort of getting so far, I think, is the complexity of the security situation and how fast things are moving, and I guess the acceptance and the willingness to embrace the sort of technologies that will enable a proactive approach. So let's have a look at those poll questions, and we'll give you a couple of minutes to answer those. So what are the primary challenges you face when implementing surveillance for remote environments? We have 4 options: limiting bandwidth and connectivity issues, ensuring data privacy and compliance, the availability of skilled personnel for maintenance, and finally, the cost of implementation and ongoing support. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about those and submit your responses. But it's interesting, we're seeing connectivity issues, it seems, as a major barrier here, perhaps, as well as the cost of implementation and support, which I'm sure we can also we can address.
Very interesting results indeed.
Yes.
Yeah, would you like to comment at this stage on those results, because it does seem to be pretty clear on those the 2 major barriers, I guess.
Sam, would you like to go first, or I'm the one on the spotlight?
Yeah, I'll give it a quick go, because I think we have coming down the line in the discussion some items that touches on these things. But let's say from a systems perspective, in the looking at it from the lens of access, since we have access with us today, there's a lot of benefits of using the on-the-edge technology that eliminates a lot of the costs and challenges that are caused by limited bandwidth and connectivity issues. These 2 things are closely related in reality. So we will talk about that in a bit at a later point, maybe a bit in more details. And when it comes to cost of implementation and ongoing support, the cost perspective, I will touch on it in a bit, maybe later, but we look at something we call total cost of ownership of these systems, and how long and effective and efficient these systems are, how accurate they are, and how they have maybe they do have a lot of indirect savings that transcend into operations and you know, and many other aspects and maintenance. Also the ongoing support, we will probably touch on it later when we talk a bit about the collaboration between us as a systems integrator and Axis and the clients as well. That's just a quick outlook, but the results are surely very, very interesting to see.
Definitely. And I will touch the two other missing points because I think they are as much interesting and important. Maybe I slightly mentioned it before. When it comes to data privacy and compliance, it's a very difficult topic to manage. But what I can share with you immediately is that at least when it comes to Axis, every single device solution or is absolutely adherent to every privacy related directive everywhere in the world, because it's really important, not only for us, but in general for our customer, to treat data the proper way. It's a very ethical problem, and it's something that we are taking very seriously. Also because the idea here is again about surveillance. It's about supporting people. It's about helping people to produce more, to get home safely at the end of the day. So that's really important. And we have all the technological tools in order to be compliant with the different privacy regulation. When it comes to the skilled personnel and maintenance, this is a topic which is very interesting from many different perspectives. But what I can say is that having these devices on the edge and relying on high-level technology is also an advantage, because maintenance could be done from remote, covering also 80%, 90% of the situation. Of course, if the camera off or if a device is not working anymore, it's a different story. But when it comes to upgrade, when it comes to configuration, when it comes to the basic things of maintenance, everything could be done from remote. And even more important, we have tools today anticipating the problem. So the devices on the field are monitored constantly, and every single deviation from the standard operational state is noted way in advance. So predictive maintenance and in general maintenance could be planned way in advance, saving money and reducing the need of person on the field, on the place of the installation, which is something, again, linked to the total cost of ownership, as Sam was mentioning before.
Okay, thank you very much. Shall we move on then to the next topic? And we're going to be looking at now the integration of surveillance systems into the existing infrastructure. And what are the main factors that need to be taken into consideration when designing a solution? Perhaps we could turn to Isam here.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Luis. I'm gonna, you know, everything we discuss from conversion perspective would be purely from an integrator point of view. I mean, the subject is very wide, so we'll just try to narrow the answer down a little bit. We have a global experience as Convergent with many global giants in oil and gas. This is important because when working in oil and gas, you get to experience a lot of the safety challenges that your client experiences. You have to go work with them on the facilities. You go through the safety procedures. In some cases, when some facilities are under attack, our colleagues are on the ground with the, you know, doing the work. So it's a very interesting perspective for us to go through, and having this close relationship with almost 20 years with many of the global players gives us a good insight on how we design these systems and the different considerations that we look at. The second element when it comes to the infrastructure side of things is that many of these global customers or large, even the regional large customers, they have a lot of legacy systems. Some of these systems have been invested in millions, and the infrastructure has been built. Some of it comes from the days where customers used to do a lot of passive detection of what's going on. So we try to leverage what they have as much as possible. Though the gap between having a camera that's maybe 10 years old and maybe a buried fiber cable doing passive detection that's maybe more than that in age, the gap is quite large. And what the benefits that they get from the modern cameras and specific access cameras when it comes of how much they're getting for the money per device, per edge device, is quite massive. The difference is quite massive. And then we get sort of a long list of questions. I'll share some of the questions that we usually get, and I'll answer them briefly in one go. So we get stuff that, do I really need to reinvest from scratch, rebuild the entire security infrastructure from scratch to get the benefits and the features? Do I need to change my VMS, video management system, into a modern, expensive one? Do I need to change my network? We get a lot of those questions, like in connectivity, in the light even of the poll that we ran. Do these systems integrate with each other? Do they talk to each other? I mean, how can, if they're not talking to each other, how can they work in my operation? Well, the short answer for that is most of these systems, I would focus on access in this case. The access solution is ONVIF compliant. It's an open platform solution where you are getting a lot of features on the edge device itself. One more thing, we are using very similar edge devices and very similar basic technology to repurpose it and use it in different nodes of the operation. So the upstream, the midstream, and the downstream that we spoke about, very similar devices are being used in different ways to solve these security problems across these different facilities. And having the benefit of an open infrastructure camera means that, and in the case of access in specific, these solutions could be utilized regardless of what VMS you have. You might have, of course, we're talking about open platform VMSs that are fairly reputable. You will get the best of the access camera regardless what you have on the VMS. The camera is doing a lot of the intelligence and a lot of the analytics on the camera itself. And we're pushing this data and this metadata back to a VMS and back to the operator, so the operator can look at it and use it and get the alert, intelligent alert ready. So you have more choices, you have more variety, and these solutions are interoperable. Basically, I can use the access camera with a whole list of different video management systems and eventually PSIMs. This saves a lot of investments. They're adaptable between platforms. And I think one key element, maybe two key points to mention before I go back to you, Louise, is Access have an ACAP program. Maybe Andrea will touch on that as well, which means that on the camera itself, we have a host of software applications. And we have the possibility to develop our own software applications that goes on the camera on the edge. So these applications could solve a lot of problems for you. Could solve a data leak, a gas leakage problem. Could solve a heat temperature detection problem. Could solve an intrusion problem. One more thing is that these cameras and many of these models are fitted with two very important hardware components. So the machine learning processing unit, or the MLPU, and the deep learning processing unit, DLPU. This means that from the factory, Access is sending us a camera that's ready for the next generation of software development, basically. It's not a basic processor that we're trying to work with. It's a very advanced processor that's sort of geared to operate in that environment. And one last point, from a convergent system integrator perspective, all of these things are really, really key for us, because it means that if we invest in a software division, and we do as Convergent, and we have the software capabilities in-house, we can work actively with our customers in the oil and gas and solve very specific problems related to specific environments and specific use cases. This is gold for us. It wasn't possible before in the legacy systems. And yeah, back to you, Luis.
Great, thank you very much for that answer. That's covered a lot of bases there. I just wondered, Andrea, is there anything you wanted to add briefly there?
Yeah, just a couple of things, because Sam has been great in summing up all the relevant topics. We were talking about before about exchanging data and let's say the link between the cameras and the VMS, or the video management system. What I would like to underline is that, considering the complexity we are working in, the link between the camera and the VMS is not the only one anymore. It's absolutely fundamental because it's for security purposes. But the thing I would like to underline is that in Axis, we use open standards in everything we do. This means that metadata we are generating, and in general, the information we can provide other systems with, are transferred to protocols that every single device or every single industry could reuse. Let's say we are going to connect our security system with a process monitoring system. The language, let's say, our cameras and the existing system are using will be the very same the other third-party system will be using. This means that we will be able to use the technology for many different purposes on top of the security one. And this kind of approach is opening up a completely new world in terms of integrations, in terms of capabilities, proactiveness, and situational awareness. And again, the relationship now between the vendor and the system integrator is becoming more and more important for the end customer, because with the knowledge from the system integrator side about the systems and about the protocols and about the way you can develop software or specific application on the edge on board, is because it's the way for solving problems we are facing today with the technology we have available right now.
Great, thank you very much. I think we now have another poll, so perhaps we can put that up on the screen. Share that. And again, we'll give you a few minutes to consider those questions and to submit your responses. So, what aspect of remote surveillance is most crucial for enhancing security in your oil and gas operations? And we have 4 options. Real-time monitoring capabilities, integration with existing infrastructure, advanced analytics for threat.
No.
And scalability for future expansion. So let's have a look and see how we're doing there. Yeah. Almost neck and neck on some of those. Okay, interesting. Some interesting responses there. Again, pretty almost equal in some of those. So, yeah, let's close that poll now. But clearly, those are all important considerations for users. Let's carry on quickly. We have got lots of questions coming in, so we will address this very, very shortly. I just wondered, on the collaboration side of things, we have touched on this already. Issam, is there anything more you want to say about the importance of the collaboration, the collaborative relationship between the integrator, the technology provider, and of course the end user?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can tell you something that, you know, even if we do a good job in the collaboration between the integrator and the manufacturer, it takes the same effort also from the end user side to make sure that all parties are in direct communication. I want to touch on a couple of very important points when it comes to our collaboration with Access in particular. We are very much focused on the area that causes the maximum impact on the projects and the success of this deployment, which is the technical delivery team. We make sure that year in, year out, we have a very detailed training schedule that we run with Access to make sure all the engineers and technicians are going through the proper trainings to know how to install these solutions. So this is a key element. And then we have the key individuals that are involved in the design and the projects and the maintenance, directly communicating with Access on a continuous basis with the regional teams all across the world, to make sure that we're sharing the types of challenges that we're facing, and we're giving this kind of feedback to Access, and Access listens to this feedback and usually helps us a lot in honestly solving many of those problems. I think the other aspect is the skilled people, and we touched on this before. The skilled people, having that right trainings in line and sort of building this knowledge with projects makes sure that eventually you have the right skilled people to do these deployments, and the skill set is becoming a bit different than some time before. We now need colleagues that can understand in depth also the software capabilities and limitations of the edge devices and can install them in the correct way so that we can get the maximum out of them, simply because of we're having analytics and a lot of analytics that are solving our problems sitting right there on the camera. Our colleagues need to understand these analytics, understand how to use them, how to configure them, and how to adapt them to that specific environment. So these are the main areas maybe to mention, and back to you, Luis.
Great, thank you very much indeed. We have got lots of questions coming in from the audience. It's clearly attracting a lot of interest, this topic. So thank you. I'd just like to thank our speakers very much at this stage for that very wide-ranging and insightful discussion, which has raised a lot of issues around complexities, security challenges, surveillance, the evolving technologies, and how it's enabling a more proactive approach. So let's have a look at some of these questions. If we could ask our speakers to answer these, some of these questions here. How about this one? What is the instrumentation used at site other than cameras to bring these benefits? Would either of you like to answer that one?
I could take this one. Almost everything. We were together with Isami, we were mentioning it before. On top of the cameras, we can use, or we could use, every single device, sensor or whatever. I would rather say that the most relevant thing is not what the sensor will be. That's not the question. The question should be, what can I use in order to achieve the best result possible? Because it's also a matter of blending in order to get to understand better what's really happening. So we could use radar, we could use thermal cameras, or literally everything. It's a matter of finding the right balance in solving the problem. And again, the role of the system integrator is key in order to understand what the options are and how to mix the different technologies in order to get the best result possible.
Great. We have a question about specifically on drone attacks. Is there any AI sort of camera technology asset that specializes in the alerting of drone attacks on facilities? And this is quite special, I guess.
There's a lot more. It's not only about artificial intelligence, it's about many different technologies together with the cameras in order to spot a drone attack in order to spot the position of the pilot of the drone, to interrupt the communication between the drone and the pilot. Of course, having everything under control with the camera. So depending on the need, depending on the environment you are in, you have plenty of opportunities and different solutions for this kind of problem.
To add to Andrea, one aspect of this, and we have experience with several access camera models, PTZs and otherwise, where we basically integrate these models with different types of RF radars or other types of radars, where the radars are picking up a certain drone in the sky, and they're doing their own thing. So they're picking up the drone, the operator, all of those things. And then you have an access camera integrated with this system that triangulates on that message, on that signal, and basically gives you a visual on that drone. This is something that we're doing in oil and gas. It could be done on scale, so it could cover long distances as well, and it could protect smaller assets or centralized assets.
Great, thank you very much. Another question for Issam, and it's talking about numbers in connectivity and how are convergent MVP solutions throttling existing bandwidths.
Yeah, I think I understand the background of this this question. It's look, this is the ongoing a challenge that many oil and gas, and other than oil and gas as well, it's a similar theme. So let's take a scenario where we're monitoring a specific area, and we have the access cameras installed, and we have the analytics running on the cameras doing their thing, detecting maybe a change in temperature or maybe an intrusion or any of those things. The video on the camera is being processed on the camera itself. We're not streaming that heavy video back to a central location. We don't need to, simply because the analytics is happening on the camera itself. What we do is, once the camera is doing the detection of the whatever the situation is, it generates an alert. This alert is an intelligent alert. It's not a dummy. It's not a passive alert. So it's telling the operator with kilobytes of information. It's telling the operator that there is something, and what that thing is. It's a rise in temperature or anything like that. And then within the allocated budget bandwidth for that particular site, we can push video on demand the way we want it, within our limitations, to see a visual confirmation of what we're talking about. This is very important, because this means that we do not need to stream this video all the way through a network back to a server, do analytics on the server, and produce the results. This saves money, it saves time, it's done in real time, and basically puts the load on the edge device itself.
Great, thank you. Question for Access for Andrea here. Is Access Communications thinking of releasing any solar-powered offline and online kit that allows deployment of standalone recording unit powered by solar with optional 4G, 5G microwave for remote locations?
Well, no. The short answer is no. We are not going, as far as I know, out of the box solution. What I can share, and it's also available on our website as a use case, we have already created a solution which is working perfectly. It could be powered by everything, depending on the needs, and it could be equipped with a 4G and 5G connectivity link. The choice has been made in order to be as much flexible as possible, but you can obtain the very same result without having a panel directly connected to the camera.
Okay, and another sort of, again, question on the equipment. Are there any underwater cameras in your portfolio? And I guess we're going increasingly offshore in the
Yeah.
So,
as per today, we do not have underwater cameras, but it's a matter which could be solved using a proper case for the camera. It's something that could be solved. and it's a matter of getting to know exactly what the use case is.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see. There's been another question about the environmental hazards and how we can mitigate. I think we've kind of addressed that earlier on. I don't know if there's anything else to add to that question on the environmental hazards and mitigating those.
Yeah, maybe just a quick comment. I think this was one of the first questions I saw on the list. Look, I mean, we're doing things in real time, right? And many of these environmental incidents that trigger a leak, and the leak becomes an environmental disaster or an explosion. If you have the camera pointed in the right area with the right analytics on it, and you get a live feed telling you that there's a problem that's starting in that area, you can have enough information and speed to action it before it becomes a disaster. In some cases, yes, there are things we can do through the cameras and through the surveillance systems, but in other cases, unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do. Sometimes it happens at sea, or is triggered by an earthquake or something like that. In those cases, no, not much we can do. But if it's something that's related to equipment and we have, or people, and we have the right analytics in play, designed properly, then yes, we can anticipate a lot of these problems.
Okay. And a question about whether the software is easy and accessible for configuration. How easy is it to actually configure software?
Andrea, maybe you want to take that?
Well, let's assume that we are professional in the IT space, or we are professional in the security market. The very basic configuration is not difficult, but we need to consider that the old system could be difficult to consider. What we are providing together with our system integrator to our customers is a complete suite of tools to simplify as much as possible the configuration and the maintenance of the system. Because it could be tricky to properly configure every single device. We have, again, tools streamlining this process and making it simple. But of course, you need knowledge. This is something that we need to consider as granted.
Okay, thank you very much. Still having some questions coming in. We have two or three more minutes if you would like to continue submitting questions. Let's have a look. A question about how advanced, again, we have more questions about offshore, so they're not just underwater, but offshore FPSOs. I don't know if there's anything more you wanted to add on offshore solutions specifically. Andrea? Or sorry, Isam? Okay.
So I, whoever is interested from the audience, we can share with them as well after the webinar, a list of documentation that touches in details on different fire rating and explosion proofing and temperature rating of these different models with access. Many of those are very usable offshore. And I mean, they work fantastic. We normally build along with those solutions. We can build it turnkey, basically, from the camera all the way to the communication. It could be a temporary installation in an offshore. And we have, with access, again, we have a lot of solutions that deal with the marine side of the industry, of the oil and gas, where on the cameras themselves or on a small server based on the vessels themselves, we can detect different accidents that might happen. If you lose man overboard, we can detect that and basically save a life. These things are basically a difference in many cases between life and death. So there are all of these things that yes, we can do and we can solve. And there's many white papers, again, whoever is interested, please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to share some of this documentation with you and previous experiences.
Yes, thank you very much. And yes, and I'm sure again for any questions that we don't have time to answer in this session, yeah, please, we will keep hold of those questions and we will pass those on after the event. And our speakers can get back to you on those, I'm sure. Okay, another question here on how to manage cameras in EOL and EOS in the oil industry. Can we think in an MSSP sales model and keep them updated? Would either of you like to tackle that one?
That's a very tough one. Let's approach the answer from two different perspectives. If the end of life is about the hardware, is one thing. If it's about the firmware, it's a different story. Let's start from the firmware. The average lifespan of a camera is 10 years. And what we at Axis are doing is to grant our customer with the so-called LTS. This means that we are providing the firmware update for 10 years. If you go through the LTS long-term support firmware choice, not adding new features, but helping our customer to keep the cameras up to date from a cybersecurity perspective. So it means that when it comes to flows or any potential issue with the firmware, that issue is solved, even if the camera is not sold anymore or if it's end of life. When it comes to the hardware part, it's something that needs to be considered with the customer. We had experiences in the past, but it's something that has to be discussed case by case, depending on the situation. For sure, in terms of sustainability, we are working in order to be able to collect back the end-of-life cameras or the not working anymore cameras in order to reuse the materials, but it's something that it's outside the scope of this discussion. And again, it's something that we need to discuss with the customer.
Okay, and we have a question very relatable to the Middle East environment about dust. How can you protect systems or ensure better endurance against dust? Andrea?
I can briefly answer this aspect. Between dust and heat, I'll choose dust any day, honestly, considering our environment. What we do with many of the global partners, many of them here in the Middle East, we have two types of maintenance contracts with them, where part of the duties is to physically go and clean the cameras. If that is again the source of the question or the motive of the question, we do this on a regular basis. It could be monthly, it could be quarterly, or it could be after an environmental event or a blizzard or a storm or something like that, or a dust storm. It's important to note that in the case of access cameras, I personally have not seen a case where dust caused a damage on the cameras themselves, on the operation of the cameras themselves. And we have a lot of solutions deployed in the most difficult of areas in Iraq, in Kuwait, and all of these places where we have not seen this as a problem. The problem is always that dust accumulation and all of those things do happen, and we need to physically go deal with them on the camera, clean it, make sure everything is working fine, make sure the casing is preserved properly.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, now I'm not sure if you've touched on this already. It's a question to Issam. Again, what is the instrumentation used at site other than cameras to give these the sort of security surveillance benefits?
Okay. So it's very scenario specific. So if we're talking about perimeter protection, there are different solutions from, without mentioning any companies, but that uses fiber technology to detect different sensors, different radars. If you're talking about environmental sensors, there are again many environmental sensors that you can deploy to detect heat or movement or many of those things. However, what is good about or excellent for us as an integrator and for the client as a user is that we have the advantage now to have a technology being the security camera itself from Axis. And we can repurpose the same technology, build software applications on it to do all of those things. We don't need to have different solutions and bury fiber cables for hundreds of kilometers and all of those things. We can basically achieve the vast majority of the requirements using software applications loaded on the camera and to a very, very high accuracy if installed and configured correctly. So this saves a lot of instrumentation. This gives quality to the type of alerts that we get, because you know exactly what you're getting. It's not a passive alert that's being generated. You know exactly what's happening. And to add to that, you get a visual confirmation through a picture or a video of what actually is going on. So yes, there are instrumentation options in the market. However, we always try to discuss with our partners, with our customers, and steer them towards, let's say, the best in class and the value for money that you get when you invest in these small fantastic cameras from Axis.
Great, thank you very much. And a question for Andrea. In the case where we're talking about remote unmanned operations, I guess here, when there are no personnel available in the facility and there's an explosion, how can the camera notify the maintenance engineer or anyone else, I guess, about the explosion in the environment?
Well, there are many ways we could trigger an alarms. We could use other sensors. We could use audio analytics, because of course the camera is also sometimes equipped with a microphone, so we could detect the explosion and triggering alarms, triggering many different procedures for the cameras and in general for the security system. So the maintenance engineers are notified of the event. And it's a matter of understanding what kind of notification, what kind of procedure should be started after the event. And it's something that we could discuss further after the event, because it's quite an interesting question.
Okay.
Louise, if you don't mind, I want to add something to this. It's a very interesting questions. We have a solution that's related to the maintenance side of things. It's a proprietary tool by Convergent, and it's called Service Plus. And what it allows you to do is you can look at thousands of devices at thousands of sites, and you get live alerts from the site in case a device goes down. And then you can remotely try to fix it, and if it doesn't get fixed remotely, you can deploy people to do it. But today, in this day and age, we are doing this as a service. We have our own SOCs in different regions of the world, and what we do is we embed these devices within the network environment, and basically get live alerts in case a camera is down or any other device in the security infrastructure is down, and then have the capacity to respond to it.
Great, thank you. Okay, and a question on sort of AI in oil and gas and how it can be used for sort of leak detection and determining what kind of gases come from flaring, etc. And I know there's a lot going on in terms of monitoring emissions and flaring and so on. Would you like to just comment a little bit about how the technology is moving in that direction? Andrea?
Yeah, I mean, there are many different solutions in terms of analytics, understanding what kind of gas you have on the flare, depending on the color, depending on many different elements which are considered. So it's just a matter of finding the right solution among the available ones for the specific customers. But it's something that it's already available on the market.
Great, thank you. I think we have time just to take maybe one more question. What measures, this is an interesting one, what measures are in place to ensure the accuracy and reliability of the data collected by cameras, offshore cameras?
That's a very good and tough question. Of course, there's no 100% reliability when it comes to data, and it happens with every device and every sensors. What we do, because it's a matter of relationship between the vendor axis, the different partners developing the AI solution, and the system integrators, we are providing a specific percentage of the reliability of the information. It's not 100%. It depends on the analytics. It depends on the way the cameras is installed and the analytics are installed. But on average, it's really high. That's the simple and quick answer. And I mean, when it comes to really high, I'm talking about 95, 98%. This is the level of accuracy when it comes to analytics.
Okay.
Sorry, Luis, just one thing to add to what Andrea said. From the experience in the past 5-6 years, I can tell you something. In the case of perimeter protection solutions, the inaccuracies in the cameras and the perimeter defender and other solutions that Axis has have been way lower than the false alerts you would get from a traditional system from the legacy days. It's way lower. Axis is much more accurate, and you can get to the detail where you can configure these systems to detect an animal versus a human. Even if a human is actually crawling into a certain fence, you can pick that up with a very high accuracy. So it's the cost benefit is really, on another level with Axis on this particular element.
And that's because the system integrator did a great job installing
Thank you, Andrea.
the system properly. As usual, if you put two great solutions together and you use them properly, the result is even better. That's the main topic.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think we just have time for one more question before we wrap up. It's about the specs of these cameras. And would there be interaction with or interface with the control system in case there would be fire or damage in any part of the facility? Could it basically make a shutdown decision?
I can answer that from a holistic perspective, because this is not only related to what the camera is doing. The camera is providing you with information. What we normally do is this information gets routed up the chain, basically. It might reach the level of a VMS or an SMS or a PSIM system. Basically, what these tools are, they are tools to manage video, but also to manage information. What we do is we built a lot of SOPs within them, and these SOPs will dictate how we respond to these alerts. So I'll give you an example. If I get a gas leak alert from camera XYZ looking at this particular corner, I want this person to be notified immediately and this authority to be notified immediately to action it. So these things, yes, they can be inbuilt to the system, and that small piece of information that's being generated from the camera is very valuable and could trigger an entire SOP. But what I mean, from an oil and gas operator perspective, we we urge the users and the operators and the guys who design these systems to consider that it's not only about the camera in these cases. They need to make sure that all the way up the value chain, they have the right systems in place to be able to build this kind of intelligence into the systems.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to end it there. There are still questions coming in, but as I said, we will try to answer those for you. And just to thank once again our speakers, Isham Shibani and Andrea Monteleone. And also thank you to our audience for your participation. And I hope you've enjoyed this webinar. There is a QR code on the screen, so please do stay connected. And please do take the survey as well. We'd love to know what your thoughts are. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody.